I'm Matt Swider with TechRadar, and we just came from our first hands-on with the Samsung Galaxy S20 phones, and yeah, there's a reason to be excited. Samsung says these three phones are their biggest phone upgrades since the Samsung Galaxy S7 and S7 Edge. And those phones, they released in 2016. So that's a pretty bold statement. We're gonna throw a lot at you, but you're gonna be pretty excited too. So let's talk about the size of these displays. We have a 6.2-inch display on the Samsung Galaxy S20, a 6.7-inch display on the Samsung Galaxy S20 Plus, and a mega-size 6.9-inch display on the S20 Ultra. It's huge, but it's actually not bigger than the Samsung Galaxy S10 5G that had a 6.7-inch display. So Samsung was able to fit more pixels in the top and bottom of the displays, and that's where it's actually grown. But you can still hold it with one hand as long as you're willing to operate it with two hands. So let's turn to the cameras. Now, that's the #1 reason that people upgrade their phones, and you're not going to be disappointed because Samsung, while they have, taken the aperture down a little bit, the microns, which are the individual pixels, they're larger, and also the sensors are bigger, and that's actually the biggest deal in my opinion. So the microns, it's 1.8 microns for the S20 Plus and the S20. And yes, the microns are smaller for the S20 Ultra on the spec sheet, but Samsung has done something interesting. They're calling it Nona binding of pixels. So they fit 9 pixels and they shove it into one for a 2.4 micron pixel size. So that is a lot of jargon, but really what it's gonna do, it's gonna give you 108 megapixels for your Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra and 64 megapixels for your S20 and S20 Plus. That's going to look great outdoors. And then once it does those that binding of pixels on the S20 Ultra, you're going to have 2.4 microns, and it's going to be a 12 megapixel photo. I'm actually really looking forward to taking photos indoors and outdoors and testing them out further in our full review. So when it comes to the telephoto lenses, we have a 48 megapixel telephoto lens on the S20 Ultra and a 64 megapixel telephoto lens on the S20 and S20 Plus. Now you're probably thinking, well, 48, that's lower than 64, and the S20 Ultra, that's the best phone. That's true, but when it comes to, again, the pixel sizes and everything, just ignore all that and know that the Ultra is going to be your better phone. And when it comes to going in and zooming in, well, the Ultra can go 100 times on digital zoom and 10 times on optical zoom without a loss in quality. That's huge. We're used to phones that do 2 times on their lossless quality on when they zoom in. That's just a big deal. The S20 and the S20 Ultra, those can do 3 times. So personally, I'd rather have the 10 times, and that's going to be a big thing to test out. So I'm willing to take the hit on the megapixels for that reason. The ultra-wide lens has probably been the one that's been the least upgraded, but that too has a better sensor. And so while it's gone down from 16 megapixels to 12 megapixels, again, you see the theme here, ignore the numbers, it's actually gonna be a lot better. All 3 cameras are better on back, and actually the S20 Plus and the S20 Ultra have a time-of-flight camera, so that should help with depth sensing, but that remains to be seen. We're gonna be testing out these cameras a lot. The front has a 40 megapixel camera on the S20 Ultra and a 10 megapixel camera on the S20 and S20 Plus. We're gonna be taking a lot of selfies, so stay tuned to TechRadar for more of that. So when it comes to the internal specs, well, Samsung's phones are kind of rivaling laptops these days. You have up to 12 gigabytes of RAM, but actually don't choose that version, it's gonna be wickedly expensive. There's 12 gigabytes of RAM in a much more affordable package. That goes across the board for the S20 and S20 Plus. So the S20 comes with 120 gigabytes of internal storage. And then you have choices when it comes to the S20 Plus and the S20 Ultra. You have 128 gigabytes, but also a version with 512 gigabytes. Again, more expensive, but you're gonna get more space. I think personally, I'm gonna be okay with 128 gigabytes because the micro SD card slot does exist in all of the phones. So if you need expandable storage, the option is at least there. So all 3 phones are being powered by a 7nm processor. It's either Qualcomm Snapdragon 865 or Samsung's own Exynos chipset, the 990. Both have 5G modem attached to them. It's actually not integrated into the chipset, but it's there and it delivers faster speeds. And we need to talk about 5G for a moment. So the S20 has sub 6, which is confusing jargon, I know, but the S20 Plus and S20 Ultra have both sub 6 and millimeter wave. So millimeter wave is the faster antenna that you're going to get, but you're actually going to have limited range. So millimeter wave is super fast, but the geography is quite small. You walk down the street and you won't have signal anymore if you're away from a 5G node that's on top of a lamppost. And then you have sub 6. Sub 6 is the opposite. It has more space. You can use it indoors, but it's kind of slower. So you're going to probably get something less than a half of gigabit per second of speed. When we were testing out millimeter wave back in 2019 in Chicago, we were hitting 1.4 gigabits of speed. So that's a huge increase, and that's going to be great, but it only works outdoors and in stadiums and so forth. So, the S20 Plus and the S20 Ultra are going to have both packed inside. They're going to be a little thicker for that reason, and they're going to use more battery life, but it's going to be worth it if you want the fastest speed and you kind of want to future-proof your phone. The S20 is actually not available on Verizon, which uses millimeter wave exclusively currently. So that's something to keep in mind. It's really going to depend on your geography and your carrier on maybe which phone you want to go with. Now, the secret thing about 5G is it's going to be great, but it's also going to be a giant battery life hog. With all three phones, we have bigger batteries. We have a 4,000 milliamp battery on the S20 phone, a 4,500 milliamp battery on the S20 Plus, and a mega-sized 5,000 milliamp battery on the S20 Ultra. Those are just big numbers that Samsung is putting up, and yeah, that's going to help out if you're using 5G. If you're not, you're going to get really good battery life on 4G. And then it has all the bells and whistles that come with fast charging. So there's super fast charging on the S20 Ultra, which is 45 watts. And then all of them come with 25 watt chargers inside the box. So the S20 Plus and the S20 are going to have 25 watt chargers, and that's all they'll be compatible with. And then you have fast wireless charging up to 15 watts, and you have reverse wireless charging in case, say, your Samsung Galaxy Plus earbuds die. You can stick them on the back of your phone and reverse wireless charge a different device. That's actually really cool. So that wraps up what we saw with the Samsung Galaxy S20 phones, and we're gonna spend a lot more time testing them and getting more video to you and telling you how those cameras are and how that battery life is. Those are really like long-term tests that we do with all phones. But looking at it and looking at the spec sheet and what we've tested so far, we're really excited about the cameras and the larger sensor sizes and just the speed of these phones and their displays. They are ridiculously expensive, especially that S20 Ultra, but I'm kind of welcoming that. Instead of saying, I want a smaller phone and I want something that's cheaper, Samsung, what they're doing is they're saying that there's no S10e sequel, there's no cheaper phone. They're making the S20 their primary cheaper phone, and that's okay with me. I really want the S20 Ultra to be something that's cutting edge and not out there. I don't want them to cut corners. So that is something I'm really excited about. Yes, it's ridiculously expensive. It is actually hand-stretching huge, but I'm going to be excited by that. So stay tuned to TechRadar for more updates on all three Samsung Galaxy S20 phones. We have tons of content from Unpacked, and you can expect more video from Mobile World Congress, which is going to have a lot more phones right here on TechRadar.com.